Hello, and welcome to Industry Talk, the student-produced show for students and young professionals in the early stages of their career in television and radio. Here, we discuss the professions that make up the very large industry of television, film, and electronic media. My name is Kaylin. I'm a television and radio student here at Pasadena City College and the president of the Pasadena Student Chapter of SMPTE, the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. Today, I'll be leading us through a discussion about the industry that started it all, radio, and the rising industry that has evolved in the electronic media industries, podcasting. We have some amazing guests today to discuss the relationship between radio and podcasting and where the future looks to take them. But first, here is a promo from the PCC to Marketing Department.
Hello, I'm Celine. I'm actually a third year transferring to UCSD as an international business major this year. So I hope you're having a great time in JAM. Let's go check out the Writing Success Center in the C building.
The Writing Success Center is actually one of my favorite places to come to. They're so helpful. Checking in is easy. When we're in person, you just need your ID card and you just have to swipe. But if you forget, just type in your ID number and your wait time will be displayed on the TV. Online, you just have to go to their website and click on their Zoom link. There are a lot of resources here at the Writing Center. You'll be connected with a personal tutor that will help you with all your writing needs, from essays to sentence structure to citations. This is open to all students in all classes, from English to science classes. Each session is about 15 to 25 minutes long, so don't even think about asking them to write your entire essays, but they'll definitely get you started. They even have workshops on lots of topics. They also have packets that you can complete that are designed to help you improve your writing and knowledge as well. This packet is called a DLA, or a Directed Learning Activity. You basically just work on the packet independently, and once completed, a tutor will come over and go over the packet to check for your understanding. It's an excellent way to also judge your writing skills and outlining your strengths and weaknesses. This resource is mostly to teach and build your confidence as a writer and teach you how to locate your errors and fix them for the future. It's so helpful, and I highly encourage you to come here often.
Lancer Life. Being a part of Puente Project.
Hi Jammers, I'm Lucas, a second-year student here at PCC and a member of the Puente Project for 2 years. Behind me is the Center of the Arts here at PCC. It's one of our newer buildings and a great place to take an art class. Now let's talk about Puente.
Students who are part of the Puente program have access to many resources, including their own English and College 1 class that is taken with the same people to build community, mentoring and counseling from designated Puente counselors, exposure to colleges and universities through in-person as well as virtual tours, and a strong community on and off campus that helps with your success and celebrates Latinx culture. There is also Puente Club that helps build community through volunteering and social meetings. Puente Project spots are limited. You can sign up using an intake form found online and sign up for Puente Club through Lancer Life. Being a part of Puente Project comes with many perks, and we can't wait to have you join us.
For generations, radio has been a part of the American lifestyle. Our grandparents sat around the radio box and listened to music, adventures, and comedy. Before the rise of television, radio was the entertainment of the masses, capturing the ears of the nation. Radio connected our country in a way that print media never could. Despite the rise of television and the internet, radio is thriving to this day, with 92% of Americans tuning into AM and FM radio each month. We may not gather around the radio the way our grandparents did, but radio is driving around with us to all our destinations. It's in our back pockets, easily accessible through the devices we carry around with us every day. To bring broader insight into the discussion on radio is our first guest, Doug Johnson. Doug Johnson is a staple here in Pasadena. Not only has he been an adjunct professor here at PCC since 1990, he is the Vice President of Technology and Operations at Southern California Public Radio. His contributions to Southern California Public Radio began in the 70s and continue to this day. He has been involved in every major radio station's technological advancement at KPCC for decades. Many PCC students within the radio department have had the pleasure to jumpstart their career through internships at KPCC. It's great to have such an influential radio professional here at our school. Welcome, Doug Johnson. It's great to have you.
Thanks. Great being here, back in the old haunt.
Okay, thank you so very much for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you. So I guess the very first question I would have for you is what your career was like starting out and like how it's changed in radio today.
So I actually was a student at Pasadena City College, took some basic classes here, and I stumbled into the radio department almost by accident. It was actually on this floor across the hall from where we're recording this. And I remember looking in there thinking, what's going on in there? They had a lot of equipment, which I was naturally interested in as a young guy. And so I pursued my interest, figure out what it was, started taking classes. They already had KPCC broadcasting from here, only at the time it was called KPCS, which stood for Pasadena City Schools. In its early history, KPCC broadcast programming to the local schools, and students could tune in to music appreciation classes or something much like you might do an internet class today. And so I took classes, and a wise instructor said you should get your bachelor's degree. So I transferred and got a degree in broadcast journalism. But a job opened up here in 1979, actually 1983, a full-time job as a technical operations coordinator. And I was largely working with students that were taking technical classes at PCC, and then we're going to do some kind of work at the radio station, and they needed somebody to kind of help them transition into the live on-air transmitter room. So that's how I got started, and of course everything's changed. Not one piece of equipment that we use today existed back then, except for, well, turntables are popular now, but back then they were all we had to play music back on. And of course we used cassettes to record people to see how they did, but mostly we used large reel-of tape machines. So everything's sort of changed, but in many ways the mixing and listening to audio and evaluating it and putting together meaningful content is the same as it was way back then.
Okay, so the technology has changed, the music is the same. I'm assuming the people is the same?
People are the same, different jobs though, a lot of new jobs that we have now that didn't exist back then. I know we're going to talk about podcasts later, but we have a podcast department, we have digital media, we have a social media person, we even have a videographer and a person that does still art.
So radio stations aren't just radio?
No, we've completely diversified, and so we have, wherever the content's being consumed, we want to have a footprint in it. Radio still pays the bills right now. It's our predominant part of our budget. But the nice part about that is it sort of allows us to explore other content distribution platforms, but a reliable income source to kind of help fund our exploration into that, which is sort of a plus. Plus we have a nice marketing arm already built in with our radio footprint.
Okay, so social media has become a thing for radio?
Oh yeah, you know, that we have somebody that manages our Facebook page and manages all our reporters are told to tweet first mindset. Get that out as quick as you can. Funny because radio used to be, you know, where news broke, but now it's where most news is corrected. But yeah, there is a breaking element that Twitter provides that you know is so much more immediate than even radio can compete with.
So students, when they're thinking about careers in radio, they shouldn't just think, oh, I want to be a DJ or I want to board op. They can think about.
I think if someone was asking me about a career in radio, I would say, well, it's not that I wouldn't recommend radio, but I would say, you know, radio's kind of a stagnant medium, but only about 3% of the people that work with us are actually radio-centric, and those are the people that tend to the transmitters and satellite dishes and those sorts of things. The rest are producers and editors and reporters and talent and audio engineers and these sorts of people. Those skills transition really well to all these other digital media platforms. So I wouldn't be afraid to get a job at a radio station. A lot of people don't think of it. A lot of the audio engineers we hire hadn't thought about it as a career and realized, oh, this this is a great place to learn and get some additional skills and then market myself or get poached by somebody else, which happens to us all the time.
Why do you think that happens?
Well, we're public radio, we're nonprofit, so we can't compete with commercial entities for top talent. So people can come in. That's why we have such a vibrant internship program. It's why a lot of people start out with us. They get a lot of skills. They can make mistakes. It's not critical. They can kind of build their career, build a portfolio, whatever it is. And then as people become more aware of them and their profile, sometimes they call them up and say, hey, we can pay you $30,000 more than you're getting paid now. And it's like, got to go.
Other than the wage, what would you say is the difference between non-commercial and commercial radio?
Well, public radio is more mission-driven. So for us, there's something about the quality of what we do, the integrity of what we do. A lot of people are interested in having meaning to the kind of work they do. So if you're a journalist, you really would like to do longer form storytelling. And cover stories that you think have an impact on society or people, so we have people that cover education, for example. And if it takes 5 minutes to tell a story or 30 minutes to tell a story, they're given the kind of latitude to do that. And commercial news specifically, which is what I'm most familiar with, it's a little bit like, can you distill that important story down to 20 seconds, 30 seconds? We've got to get our commercial load in, hurry it up, kind of a thing. So it's more like news headlines, but not a lot of depth to the story.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure this is something a lot of students would like to know. What are like the responsibilities that an intern would have at KPCC?
So depending on where the first thing we ask all interns. So we have interns that are not PCC students, and we have some that are. The ones that are PCC students are sort of guaranteed an experience if they take the right segment of class and are interested in working there. Not everybody wants to come and work there. So depending on which path you're going to take, that'd be the first thing we'd want to find out. So if you're a PCC student, I'm the point person to figure out where they would land in the organization. So I usually ask them, what do you want to do? What's your end game? What do you want to be? If they say, I'm really interested in audio engineering specifically, then it's like, okay, I'm going to work with you on how that plays out. If it's anything else, there's another person that I work with. Her name's Ashley Alvarado, and she will meet with the person, ask them what they're interested in, and then she'll plant them if it's podcasting or digital media, or we do live events. She'll then place them in the kind of content experience. So she has much more knowledge of those kind of experiences. And we love PCC interns for one reason, because they're budgeted in their own budget account. So if you go to work with our content staff or marketing or whomever, it doesn't hit their budget. It hits a guaranteed budget. So it's like getting a free worker that's not coming out of your money stack, if that makes sense. But so it makes it a lot easier to get them in place.
That probably makes the tie between PCC and KPCC pretty strong, right?
Oh yeah, I mean we have just for clarification, KPCC, the license is still held by the college, so they own that asset, and we have a lease to operate contract with the college. So there are a lot of things that are built into that college that contract that require us to do a certain amount of internships per year. That, for example, the station identification at the top of the hour always gives credit to the college, those sorts of things. And they have some, they even have some promotional material that runs on our station regularly.
Then I guess you could say that our department is the television and radio department. The radio kind of stands on its own. So would you say that maybe television department should consider trying to go for those radio jobs?
Well, if they wanted the experience, we do some video, believe it or not. We have a small auditorium. We haven't been able to use it for the last 2 years because it's a live event. But that team has portable cameras and switcher. We stream all the events. We broadcast them, or either live or delayed broadcast, something like that. But there's a lighting element to that show. There's a video element to it. We have 4 portable cameras that we could set up, a little switcher. Nothing as exotic as you have here, but I mean it's the same kind of work. So there are opportunities to do a little bit of everything now. This is where we see media has gone, is not just audio, but it's audio, video, streaming, podcasting. It's a little bit of everything these days.
Okay. So radio is diversified very much. That's very good. What kind of education do you think people would need to go into radio?
Depending on what you're going to do, it's the different requirements. As an audio engineer, we love it if they come over with their SPE certification, because we know they have some grounding in actual broadcast technology, which we still deal a lot in. If you're a journalist, very often you have to have your master's in journalism from somewhere.
Okay.
If you're going to be, an audio, as I said, audio engineer, pretty much we've taken those people in just if they know how to run the equipment, if they're familiar with it. I would say out of our 12 studio engineers, I think about 10 of them have some connection back to PCC.
Okay.
The nice part is that when we work them as an intern, we train them up on all our equipment. Then when we have an opening, they have such a head start in that job because they already know how to run everything we do.
Okay.
If you wanted to be a manager, though, you probably have to have a background in business or business management.
Okay.
So it depends on where you're going to land. It's a big operation, and we have 200 employees.
So our students should consider the fact that going into radio, you could be a business major and potentially still have a place in radio.
Oh, sure. We have a sales department if you had an interest in sales. We have a finance department, so we have 4 or 5 people that are keeping tabs of the books. And then a lot of business management and relationship management, that sort of thing.
Okay. There's one question that keeps tickling my mind. In all your years at KPCC, did anyone ever try and poach you?
I get job off. It's funny. Because of my title, people search through what's the
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. So I've had several really good job opportunities thrown my way, but it primarily requires me to relocate in Washington, D.C., or I had a good opportunity to go up to San Francisco, but most of my connections are here. Family live here. I have the connection to PCC. It's pretty good deal. So it'd have to really be a remarkable opportunity. Yeah.
Well, then that must make you probably one of the most luckiest men in the world, because you're so content.
I'm never really content, but
okay.
I mean, I'm always looking for if I were content, then I would probably wheel back on everything.
Yeah, that's true.
I always thought I would retire after 30 years of teaching, and now it's been 32, and I actually find it one of the things I enjoy most in my life, largely because it's if it's good or bad, it's all on me. Whereas my day job, there's so much collaboration, you're not really clear, like, we all made that work. But it's the one thing, teaching for me is the one thing I know, if it went well or did not go well, then that's all on me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was great.
Yeah.
For podcasting.
Honey.
Supposed to address them. Yes, they were great. They are. When television entered the media scene, people said that radio was doomed to lose its audience. That didn't happen. When podcasting came on the scene, people again began exclaiming that radio was about to meet its maker. This new form of entertainment on the rise is growing at an astonishing rate. As of 2020, 56% of Americans listen to at least one podcast a month. That's up from 26% in just 2018. With the barrier of entry for podcasting being so low, everyone and their mama is starting their own podcast show. Here to shed some light on what starting a podcast is like, our next two guests are live with us via video call. Laura is a writer and host of The Only One on the Podcast. You can find some of her articles on Huffington Post and The Temper. Laura is also an advisory board member for the San Diego Writers Festival and the Outlier HQ Podcast Festival. Scott is the producer of the Only One in the Room podcast and Laura's co-host on the show. Together, this amazing couple have built from the ground up, talked to their guests about their stories. Their podcast hopes to inspire change in how we perceive people by connecting through the common experience of feeling like the only person in the room who has experienced what they're going through. The show strives to show us that for all our differences, we are more alike than we realize. Welcome, Laura and Scott.
Thank you, Kaylin.
Hi, Kaylin.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Laura.
Good. It's good to be here.
It's good to see you guys again. I guess the first question that I would really like to ask is what your backgrounds were like before you started podcasting.
Oh, well, I'll start. I was an at-home mom for about 20 years. And prior to that, I was a publicist. During that entire time, I was a writer.
Okay.
And the podcast was created to support my writing. Yeah.
Okay. And Scott?
I have no background in media, although I worked retail for many years. So I know a little bit about marketing and business and advertising a little bit. I've been a father, a business owner. I've worked in the ski industry for years and just found my way into podcasting, trying to support Laura and her writing and the branding of this venture that we have together.
Okay. I bring this up because here at Pasadena City College, we don't just have high school students, or previous high school students, we also have students who are starting their lives over, and maybe they might be interested in going into podcasting. And I just wanted to make sure that people understand that no matter what your background is, podcasting is a way for anybody to get started. Podcasting is something that anybody can do, and I'm hoping you guys can shed light on that for us. Well,
yeah, podcasting is accessible to everybody.
Yeah. So I guess this would lead into my next question, which would be, what are some of the challenges of starting a podcast and maintaining it?
Well, I would say probably the biggest challenge in starting and maintaining is discoverability and making your podcast discoverable to your to the audience you're hoping for, but just you want it to be shareable. You want people beyond your target audience, your target demo, to listen and love your podcast. I'm sorry, I'm hearing an echo, so if I'm talking stilted, it's because I am hearing my echo back, but is the biggest challenge of any podcast. And whenever I go to a podcast festival or conference, the panels on how to make your podcast discoverable are always the best attended.
Okay. What about you, Scott? What would you say is the challenge of maintaining?
I think building a platform to make the content discoverable is a challenge. We have a website. We channel everything Laura does through the website, and we channel the inversely. I'm sorry, the echo is incredibly distracting.
I'm so sorry.
We channel the podcast back through the website as well. So attaching social media to all that, promoting on all levels, according to how it's best received from Twitter to Instagram to Facebook to the website. It's a lot of work. Yeah.
Okay.
And like Laura said, I think you start with a perceived audience, and then what you do is you find the audience that likes what you offer and address the continued growth and arc of the content towards them.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit what it was like building your own podcast? I know you guys did it in like the midst of a pandemic. Can they not
To
hear
talk
me?
about how, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, in 2019. In April.
Mm-hmm.
April 16th, I just looked it up. It was that was our first release date. And I would say, just to better understand what it was like to create it, you have to understand the different roles that Scott and I have. So my role is host creator. I'm more the talent, and I book the guests, and I schedule the guests. So everything else, including the website, including the recordings, including building the studio, including the equipment, the engineering, keeping the audio files, the show notes, the asset letters to the guests, that's Scott. So for me, building the podcast was all about booking guests and making sure we had great stories to tell. But he was in charge of all the scaffolding that supports that work.
Yeah, he plays a very big role. That makes sense.
Yes.
Producing something is very hard. Very
It is
impressed.
indeed.
Yeah. What was it like doing your very first episode?
I was
We were
really
in a
nervous.
studio. That was not our studio.
I mean, Laura and I
Were you
had
saying something,
done,
hon?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Scott was
I
saying,
can't.
Okay. Scott was saying that he was very nervous, which I know is something for sure that he's not always very happy to be on camera, but
Right.
he does so good at it.
Getting better at it.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, you were saying...
It was really exciting, though, too. We had put a lot of time and energy into it. And we started the beginning of our podcast by renting studio space to record in. We used a sound engineer, and we had a production person on site that helped us with all the elements of the podcast to be assured that we put them in the episode. And that was a very controlled it was a great way to learn, I think.
Okay. I guess I want to jump in with Doug and see if I can get this conversation to spark something.
Sure. I have a quick question because I'm kind of a bystander here. What's the nature of your podcast? This title is the name of it. It's really nice, but I don't know what you're focusing on.
So it started with a 3-day retreat that I went to in 2018, and there were 600 people there. And as it turned out, I was the only black one. And so I wrote about it for the Huffington Post when I got home afterward, and the article went viral. And immediately I started getting messages from all over the world, direct messages, comments, emails, from people who connected with the feeling of being othered, of feeling like the only one in the room. And so we decided that instead of telling stories about Black people, specifically feeling like the only one in the room or being the only one in the room, we would open up and hear everyone's stories about feeling or being the only one in the room. And hoping that in the telling of those stories, that other people would be able to connect and people would feel less alone.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, they have an amazing, amazing show. Could you tell us what guests maybe stood out to you most while making the show?
You want to take that, hon?
I'm the worst at that. We have so many guests that I love. Let's see, we've had John Cryer, who is an actor I think everybody's familiar with. In his off time, he studies wrongfully conviction cases and brings them to the attention of people who can change it. So he was the only supervillain who was, what was the end of his title? Yeah, I can't hear you, hon. We had a guy who was in prison for 10 years for embezzlement, who wrote a story about, told a story about learning how to write stories in jail. So he was writing people's story in prison, and came out and sold a few screenplays.
Wow.
And I'm the worst with names, so you've actually asked the worst person. Yeah. Uh-huh. I mean, we've had so many stories.
Mm-hmm.
I can't hear, huh?
But the ones that impacted me the most, I think, were this woman, Pam O'Donnell, whose husband was taking her child, she has 2 children, they have 2 children together, and he was taking her somewhere after school, and someone who was texting and high on Adderall slammed into the back of them and incinerated the car with her husband and her daughter in the back. And she has a foundation that helps people cope with that type of grief. Her story impacted me when she told it to me, when I first heard it about it, and for months and years afterward, and she's still a friend of our show.
Wow, that is very impactful, for sure.
Yeah.
You guys definitely meet a lot of interesting people, hear a lot of interesting stories. I wonder how that actually impacts you in your own life. Like, does it make you feel more connected to your audience or the guests you have?
Yeah. I think it would be very difficult to hear these raw, vulnerable accounts of people's real lives and not feel more connected to them. And the really great thing is that when we do tell these stories on our show, the people that connect to us, people write us, they call us, they text us, that was for me, that was my story, thank you for that story. So it's a domino effect of change every time.
Well, I've always really admired what your show does. It very much reminded me that I should strive to achieve something. I think it's one of the reasons why I produced this show, because I really wanted to build something that was a foundation in my own department, and feel like I could reach out to people who would understand me and my passion for school and radio and television and all this. but I would like to know what it's like to interact with listeners online and how you actually do that.
Oh, well, mainly they DM or they're in the comments because we post all of our episodes on social media.
Do you have anything
sometimes-
that you use to like let them reach out to you other than like DMs?
Yeah, they can email us at theonlyonePod@gmail.com, and we get a lot of emails there.
Okay.
I usually go through that a couple times a month, and I always get back to everybody.
Okay. That sounds like a lot of communication, especially online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's important. I think, we're producing this podcast in a vacuum. It goes out into the ether. And for people to be impacted by it and to tell us about the impact and get a real response for somebody, it can be really powerful and meaningful.
Okay. Doug, I know you said that your radio station has podcasting. How is that?
So we have different types of podcasts. Some of them are. It's interesting to see the arc of the history of podcasts because sometimes a podcast would become a radio show, and more recently, some radio shows have become podcasts. So we have a little bit of both. Our most downloaded podcast is a film reviewer show that we do every Friday. We have some noted film reviewers in the LA area come in, and that's very popular. And then another one is just some of our daily news is wrapped up into a nice, clean daily podcast at the end of the day, kind of recapsulizes some of the things we've been covering.
Okay.
And then we also have specialty podcasts. We did one on earthquake preparedness that was very well received. And so they tend to be news stories that have a interesting element to them that might be bigger than just a daily story. So something that can be episodic, 5 or 10 episodes. And it's morphing. We're learning, we're kind of late to the game, but we're learning what plays, what doesn't, what people like, what doesn't. And then also tackling the monetization element. What are people willing to pay for and put a commercial on there. And so it's challenging. We're learning a lot, but it's work in progress.
So since it's public radio, you can't really do commercials like normal radio.
You do they call them sponsorships, although the podcasts don't really fall under the same rules and regulations as the radio station. So you could put commercials in there if you wanted to, but we try to apply the same integrity that we do over the air to our podcasts.
So Laura and Scott, do you have sponsors or anything you throw in there for your podcast?
Yeah, you want to take that, hon?
I can take a little bit of it. I do think a lot like radio, you need support, and we've been able to monetize our podcast mostly through advertisement. We have pre-roll spots, mid-roll spots. One of the freedoms I think you get in podcasting is you get to create ads with the host. They get to sit down and talk about the product, and it gives a special relationship to the listener and the audience that doesn't always feel so like something that's pre-recorded and slapped into the content.
Okay.
And it's taken a while to really grow that, but we're getting to a place where it's sustaining the content.
Okay. How many sponsors do you have currently? Before I knew it was
they buy week, like BetterHelp has bought a full year with us, and so is Voyage AC, but the other ones come in and out. It could be 6 weeks, and then we don't have ads for them for a month or two, and then they're back. They get dropped into an ad calendar for us, so
Okay.
we just look ahead and record ahead, depending on what ads we have that week. But it's always BetterHelp, and it's always Voyage AC.
Okay.
And we always we work with an advertising agency that helps finds us new sponsors, and also does dynamic insertion when we do have available space as well. It pays a lot less than the sponsorship ads, but it still helps pay the bills.
Okay. Then I guess podcasting and non-commercial radio have the same challenge of funding your guys' work. That means very much to you guys.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that we're fortunate that the radio service is very well monetized these years because it's a really well-established business, especially the underwriting and direct support from our audience. So it helps cover our foray into podcasting, so we have a reliable stream that we can then use to help pay for the cost of the podcast.
There is a question from the viewer for you, Doug. Someone wants to know, what's it like to work with Larry Mantle?
That's funny. So Larry and I, we have this amazingly parallel career. We both started at the same time, full-time in 1983, but our paths could not be more dissimilar. I love working with Larry. He's a brilliant man. He has some rare skills that I have a deep appreciation for. One is that he can think and speak at the same time. And two, he knows a little bit about a lot of stuff. But he's a genuinely nice person. And I've met a lot of people on the radio over the years whose on-air personality and their real personality are not the same. But he's a very generous and kind man on the air, and he's that way in person. And I feel lucky to, if there's ever a topic that I'm interested in or I want something to understand it better, I can always pull him aside and get a 10-minute update on just about anything in the world. So it's a real pleasure to work for Larry. I'm a little envious because he gets to fully focus on just one thing every day. And my job, I have to focus on all sorts of different stuff all day long. So.
It looks like we also have another question. Do students in the radio program need to have journalistic backgrounds as well to be interns at KPCC?
No, we bring them in for all sorts of things. Again, it depends what they want to do. It just tends to be that the technical, we get a lot of technical applicants because they have a lot of technical experiences at PCC. And technical is very black and white. It's like, is it working, is it not working? Can you operate this or can you? Whereas talent is something usually that has to be developed a little bit. If somebody wanted to do story coverage or something like that, they generally have to work with someone for a while before they'll let them go out and do a story on their own. And definitely, like hosting would take a while to build up to that.
I see. Okay. Well, before I ask you this next question, I want to thank George and Sarah for submitting their questions online. This is a live stream, so very much thankful. I'm very grateful for it. My next question is podcast related. I wanted to know if you actually had a podcast or not that's similar to The Only One in the Room, where you actually invite guests, like new individual guests each time.
We started off with one that was actually being produced in Mexico City by a young Latina, and it was called Yeah, I'm Not Okay. And it started to do very well, but then she got recruited fairly quickly to a larger production company. So we did 3 episodes of that, and we were real excited, and it played very well in LA. In fact, it still has a good download from our site, even though there aren't any new episodes being produced. But one of the perils of being public institution is that somebody can come along and outbid you on just about anything.
Maybe you should try and poach
Scott
and
well, they might enjoy the independence of their own program, I imagine. But if they were interested, I could always put them in touch with the right people.
Yeah, actually, I think we've been poaching from you guys.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to have the opportunity to work with you guys for my first internship. And it was something interesting for me because I had never thought I would ever be interested in podcasting, let alone radio. But I think my internship with you guys made me very much more open-minded towards my career path. So I very much thank you for that. Very much so.
Thank you.
No, we thank you.
You were fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Scott kind of inspired me a little bit when it came to producing. Oh.
Well, it's interesting. Podcasting is an audio medium, but with a very strong video element to it. And I think a lot of people forget how to market a podcast. You need really good video. Almost every popular podcast in the world has a video channel, a YouTube channel, which we also have, and you also have to promote on social media. So the development of all those aspects involves somebody who's video oriented. And you were great. You were a great addition to the team.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it was interesting realizing that video would be something that I could do for a podcast. It was, like I said, eye-opening. And it like I said, it showed me that there was more options for what I could do. And while I'm still very much definitely dedicated towards TV, I've also expanded my decisions towards radio as well. So I guess I should try and get you guys to have some more students over to you guys, because let's face it, you guys deserve to have people who would love to help build you up even more and more. You've done so well already. But,
Thank you.
And I'll also sympathize with Doug in that there's a lot to do when you're not the talent, huh, Doug?
Yeah.
You were going through your list of admin, post-production, art design, social media, videography, audio engineering. You know, that is, it's when you said your friend was lucky to have one thing to think about every day, I was immediately jealous, because juggling all these things is quite a challenge on a regular basis.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that too. Being a student and then deciding to take an extracurricular, position where it's leadership, but also not really having any guidance besides your advisors on like how to do it, but like also having to be innovative, or at least feel like you have to be innovative in like how you do it. Otherwise you feel like you're not doing anything. I don't know how I would add a job to this, like just a regular job. Like if it was in my career field, I would love that. But like if doing a part-time job on top of school, on top of extracurriculars, yeah, I feel like it'd be a hard one to do. I have another question from George. Do podcasts need to have a format from the start, or can they find their voice along the way? How did Laura and Scott go about it?
You want that
Well,
one, honey?
I think, yeah. Well, I'll just say that I think because we wanted to tell other people's stories, right away we knew it was going to be an interview podcast. And so we just built it around that format. But we started off with a slightly different format than what we have now. We had a segment at the end where I would read one of the letters that was sent to me after that article went viral and have my guest help me respond to it. We eventually eliminated that because we wanted to use the whole time to talk to the guest. So I think it's, you want to know if you want to do an interview podcast, or if you just want it to be a solo venture where you're talking into the mic, or you're reviewing things like Doug was talking about. Those can be really popular. Companion podcasts are really popular right now. Those are when you have a show or a movie that's doing really well, and you have a podcast that talks specifically about that show or movie. Usually shows with several episodes. Those are the ones when you have the companion podcast with that. So you kind of want to have a format in mind that you can always evolve or devolve it. that's the great thing about podcasting is you're not regulated by anything. You have an RSS feed and you can do whatever you want. No one can shut you down. And if you own your own IP, your own intellectual property, you can basically do whatever you want with that property with your own RSS feed. So you can shut it down and retool it. You might risk losing sponsors, but you just if it doesn't feel right, you can do something else with the same RSS feed, which is like your landing pad. So that's for us. We knew it was going to be interview.
Okay. Yeah. When you said companion podcasts, my first thought was, someone is offering to be a companion and they invite people on to talk about their traumas but I guess that
might be a good podcast.
Yeah, maybe. Well, that is a free idea. I'm not going to claim it. I promise. I guess show outro then. We're wrapping it up. Okay.
Wrapping it up?
Yeah, yes. We are coming to the very end. This has been a great first episode of Industry Talk. I'm very proud to have it happen.
Wait, this is your first episode?
This is the very first episode.
Oh, wow. You did amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you to everyone who tuned in live and submitted their questions. Thank you to Doug Johnson. Thank you to Laura and Scott. You were amazing for joining us on this first episode. I hope their answers tonight helped you shed some light on any of the aspiring TV and radio students out there and their career options. We hope to see you in our club meetings on Thursday in C117 at PCC from 12 to 1. Maybe you can be part of our next production of Industry Talk. Until then, take care, everyone. That was great.
Awesome.